So in the last video, we discussed computers before operating systems. Today, we're going to start with the 1950s and 1960s and explore some of the new technology that led to the development of operating systems. So in the 1950s, one of the things that came around was the mainframe. The UNIVAC mainframe was created in 1948, and 46 were sold in 1951. The machine famously predicted the outcome of the 1952 presidential election. The polls were wrong. By 1959, over 50,000 machines that were mainframes were being sold yearly. Early mainframes still used punch cards, so operating systems were not yet needed. These machines were still the focal point of any room, and usually one was enough for an organization. Later mainframes integrated a keyboard for input and a printer for output. As more keyboards were added, the need for operating systems became apparent. Jobs were submitted by users and then scheduled to run one at a time. So typically these were still run in batch, but operating systems also started to integrate common libraries as well. The 1960s was an important time for growth in operating systems. The mini computer was smaller than a mainframe, but could still take up more room than a single rack. It used core memory and transistors in place of vacuum tubes, and it was intended to be shared by multiple users logged in at the same time, which resulted in several advancements in operating systems design. In 1961, user programs were no longer allowed to directly access input and output, because of the introduction of a separate mode for user control of the CPU versus operating system control of the CPU. When the operating system is in control of the CPU, this is called kernel mode. In order to get input or output, a user program has to execute a system call, which hands control of the computer back to the operating system to handle this request. In 1965, Dijkstra introduced the multi-programming system. He didn't name it. The is an acronym. The system introduced a layered design for operating systems. While it also included multi-processing and synchronization, we will spend more time on both of these terms in later videos. In 1965, researchers from Bell Labs got together with GE and MIT researchers in an attempt to design a perfect operating system. If they had, we wouldn't still be studying operating systems today. What they did create, called Multics, was used for time sharing on mainframes from 1965 to 2000. That's still quite a legacy. ACM is the Association for Computing Machinery. In 1967, ACM founded the Symposium on Operating Systems Principles, which is to this day one of the leading conferences in operating systems research. We discuss this conference today because it's relevant to critical improvements in operating systems design during this period. For instance, the first SOSP was where Dijkstra published his work on the multi-programming system. It is also where Peter Denning published the working set model, which we will learn about in later videos. And finally, in 1969, Unix was created by Dennis Ritchie and Ken Thompson, bringing about the era of operating systems as we know it. Dennis Ritchie might sound familiar if you have done programming in the C language. He invented this. Unix was primarily created using the C programming language and assembly code. Ritchie and Thompson published their work on Unix at the 4th Symposium on Operating Systems Principles and were awarded the 1983 Turing Award for inventing Unix. Unix was originally owned by AT&T. So that wraps it up for this video, and when we come back, we'll learn more about the 1970s and 80s era of computing.